The webinar will be distributed afterwards public, so you can watch it, you can share it with your contacts at the same time. We will share it online. Okay, so today we will present together. So Heiko, our head of electronics, is with us, and I'm Tim, the Chief Technical Officer. And we will talk about the Sony FR7 Zoom motor, which is a deeply integrated zoom motor for the FR7 PTZ head. Today we're going to talk about what you can do it, how you set it up, what are the use cases for it, when will be the firmware release, for example, and some technical stuff to know about, compatibility. So it's going to be an exciting session to be together. Feel free, anytime you have questions, please type it in or let us know. So what is the FR7 motor? You can see here the zoom motor on the FR7, and it is meant to motorize your zoom on the FR7. So there are 3 motorized zoom lenses from Sony for the PTZ camera, but there's a range of 20 additional zooms which only have internal iris or internal focus control, but the zoom is motorized externally or needs to be motorized externally. And this way, with this motor, we have created a tool for you to have the freedom of choice for choosing the lens you would like to use. So Heiko, to give it a start, how about you let us know how to set it up? How do you mount it?
Okay, thanks for the point. Well, the motor itself actually comes in one piece already, so you don't have to think about any needed cables or something like that. So all you need is on this motor attached. This is out of the box. Within the box, we also have an additional the flexi gear for the mounting on the zoom ring, as all the lenses of course have just a rubber ring and not a suitable 0.8 module gear. The motor itself also comes with 2 different gears to snap on, so it's easy to remove and attach the other gear. The reason for that is that we have a smaller gear, which actually is the preferred one, which enables most of the torque. So because as smaller the diameter, as higher the torque of the motor, of course. But if you encounter no problem because of the shape of the lens, you could also attach a bigger gear, which is then a 30mm gear. Yeah, how to mount it? Actually, quite straightforward. First, of course, you would mount your lens, your desired lens, to the camera. Then we suggest to slide on the motor. The motor, by the way, is a 50mm bracket, integrated bracket on it. So you simply slide it on. There's a lever for closing and fixing. And you would slide on the motor on the existing support rod, which comes with the camera already. And if you close the lever, don't press the motor too hard against the lens, because some bendings might occur. It's too strong or too much force needed. So easy going, just attach it easily and then close the lever. After that, we have an upper and a lower clamp for the cable, which seamlessly fits to the vertical part of the pen axis. So you would slide on the pen axis, the upper clamp on the pen axis. On those clamps there are rubbers, which you would wrist around the vertical part of the clamps of the pen axis, so that maybe I show that to you and give it a closer look. So, Mark, maybe you can zoom in as much as possible. You see the upper clamp goes here, and there's the rubber which goes just around this piece of the camera. Don't pull the rubber strap around the tilt axis as well. So you should not take the rubber strap and put it here. It should go that way.
So basically, even when you're setting it up, as a little hint, it's probably easier to just turn it up, because then you have all access down in this area.
Exactly.
So you put the clamp on, turn it up, and then you can have it easily tied onto that arm.
Exactly. So after the upper part, you would attach the lower clamp, vice versa, and then at the end there is a kind of a distribution breakout box existing on the cable already, which provides the data and the power out for the camera. So the entire solution moment currently is powered by the original power supply, so you would not need any additional power supplies for the motor. So the power supply of the camera goes into the socket here, the DC socket of the breakout, and then the breakout will provide the power to the camera. And there is another, as I mentioned already, the RJ45 plug, which is not an Ethernet, it's not a network connector, it's actually for the option port. It's a serial connection. So, so if you have done this, next step would be to get the head in balance. So on the rear side of the camera there is a big lever which has to be opened, and then you can slide backwards, forwards until the camera is balanced. Then close the lever again, and after that you would close all these levers here. So you have to take a really good care about to close every lever which is intended for fixing the lens in position, so that prevents from bending the lens when operating the zoom. So make sure that everything is tightened. And
so basically you're saying that you are unplugging the power of the camera, take that power into our distribution box, and the distribution box has a power out connector again into the camera, so we don't need to have extra power. We have still one power supply, one cable.
Exactly.
Okay, and we don't intercept the Ethernet cable for control.
No.
So we have worked with the option port from the camera, so the camera actually controls it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So if you are finished with that, you can provide the power to the camera, or to the motor and the camera again. So the camera takes a little like 30 seconds to boot. If it boots, it's calibrating the lens, the pen and tilt axis. Somebody has Okay, thanks. So once again, so after boot up sequence, the camera will initialize the axis, the mechanical axis, and the motor axis, the zoom axis as well in the same time. So no worry about that. So actually, from camera side, we are finished in the mechanical way, but now it starts calibrating, as you see. Also, the zoom motor does the calibration process. So after that, you would have to go into the web front end of the camera, which I may share with you right now.
So basically, when you power up, the FR7 has to calibrate itself, and at the same time the motor is doing it together.
So, but maybe you did not configure it. So what you actually have also to keep in mind is that you have to tell the camera the current state of software. You have to tell the camera that this external motor is connected. So how to do this? I opened the graphical user interface of the camera via Ethernet. You would go to the setting section of it, and on that to the technical section, and then lens controller. Here you will find, as you see here, named Zoom, and the setting has to be set to on, as it is here at the moment. After applying this, the camera will perform another reboot, and then you don't have to do that again. So you do it once, and then you're done. Additional settings on this section would be a mode change. So Chrosziel has on other motors, we took this over from other universal zoomers and so on, several modes of operation which are intended for manual operation of the motor. If you are an operator which is sitting on the remote panel and operating a rocker, a zoom rocker, you will most likely maybe would like to have some ramping and maybe not the fullest speeds and so on. So you can select several modes of that. Timmy might explain later some more details about what every mode could do for you. There's another switch which is for reversing the motor. So if this is the default installation for the moment, as you see here, but you could also mount the motor on the other side or maybe on the top. So a direction change of the operation direction of the motor might be necessary. You can remotely execute an initialization of the zoom motor again if you don't need to.
So initialization means calibrating.
Yeah, the end-stop calibration. Yeah, Sony calls it. I wanted to stay in the same language, so Sony calls it always initialization. So we call it calibration, but it doesn't matter. It's the same matter.
So it's basically finding the end stops of the zoom.
Yeah. We asked Sony to implement this functionality of being able to remote initialize the motor also to the remote panel. So if you are not connected with a PC or laptop or Mac, you could actually assign a user button on the remote panel with the latest firmware on the remote panel side to put it on a user key for instant calibration. Actually, no, we didn't.
So basically, when we are using the software, we don't need to do it every time. You have to tell one time that you are calibrating and that you have a motor on the camera. As soon as the camera knows that there is a motor or the zoom motor, then it remembers. So after every start, it automatically calibrates itself. So you have to set it one time, and then this way you can do that. So actually, let's stop sharing the screen so that you see us again a little bit. So what is probably quite interesting is now we know how the motor is set up on the FR7. However, what you want to do as well is you want to control it. So how do you control it, or what are the options of controlling it?
The options are what I showed already, a live mode on the web front end of the camera itself, but we also have the remote panel which enables a human interface, which I would prefer if I would operate the camera, where you get a zoom rocker and then pan tilt joystick. But there are also third-party companies which offer wheels and so on, for controlling the head. So this all doesn't matter to the motor because the motor is always controlled, centralized by the camera itself. So the motor does not care about where the zoom information comes from. It just does what it gets told by the camera.
So basically, whatever controls the camera means controls that motor. If you are able to control somehow an E-mount zoom or the FR7 zoom, this will work that way with the zoom motor.
Just a closer look on the motor. There is a button here and a LED. The button is actually intended for a third possibility to calibrate the motor manually. So if you can reach the motor or the FR7, you could actually here execute by press of the button the recalibration of the motor. And the LED beside this is showing you the status of the motor. So if the LED is stable green, then you are good to work, so everything is fine. And then if it's flashing somehow, something is going on either an error was detected or the motor is about to calibrate. So that's it on this side.
So one thing to talk about and what's very exciting is to check about that gear. So there is a wide range of zoom lenses from Sony, and if you look at the range of zoom lenses, they do not have gear on it. So in the package, that flexi gear is included, and what you do is you slide it onto the zoom ring, and then you tighten it. Now what you have to watch out a little bit is, you see when you tighten it, you have this little positioning here. So this position, you do want to have it opposite of your motor, so that way when you turn it, it does not hit your motor. And at the same time, with tighten it, you see that little ring down here will tighten it more and more. So either cut it off or have it on the other side and make sure that it doesn't hit the rods on the bottom or get stuck, for example, in the motor. So this is included in the kit. So this gives the idea of what can be really done with that, or what lenses are now compatible with it. So there's a list from Sony to about what is compatible or what lenses are compatible in the range of what is there. I will share that real quick with you that you get an idea about it. So you should be able to see now a website from Sony, which is the ILME-FR7 compatibility information, and you see some of the fixed focal lengths, but if you go down, you see a range of zoom lenses, and the range of zoom lenses shows you how it is compatible. So for example, we have here on our system a 70-200, and if you click on there, you can see even more details. I hope you see the pop-up. So you can see even the teleconverter. So if you take a 2x converter, you are able to zoom 140-400. So this is something I will post in a second in the group. There's a good question about, is there more than one ring included? No. Right now there's one ring included, and with that ring you can reuse it. There are not so many different diameters on those zoom lenses. However, we do offer those as single items or in set of 4 on our website, so you easily can get that. And of course, if you have a preferred ring or the lens already has gearing, of course you can use that. So it's a 0.8 pitch gear. While we were talking now about the 140 to 400 zoom range, there are 2 use cases probably, or multiple use cases, but especially for those specific lenses where actually from Sony there are no powered zooms. One example, we will be talking soon together with Albrecht. He will be joining a little bit later today, so he's sorry that he has an appointment before, but he will join for sure. Albrecht, the CEO for the Cineshop, who has done a quite exciting live event with the FR7. At the same time, what are the possibilities? What can you do? Let's think about government, house of worship, churches, concerts, stadiums. You can put them even on a beauty cam all the way high in the stadium and have remote control and can zoom in. You can go in the back of a parliament and then live transmit or record the session with a 140 to 400 zoom. So 400 millimeter, you can be quite far away to still get a perfect framed image. So the idea of what the motor is being able to do is it gives you the freedom of choice of what lens you want to use. So instead of the choice of having 3 motorized lenses from Sony, now we are able to offer you the full range of Sony zoom lenses and even more lenses, even manual cinema lenses, which probably will pop up very soon in the chat of how about iris and focus. One thing is, if you want to operate only focus, let's say you have a manual lens, like a prime lens, then what you can do is you use the motor and disengage it or engage it on the focus ring, and then you would be controlling focus via the zoom rocker or other options of how you can remotely operate the zoom. That's probably one case. On those zoom lenses here, you have motorized focus and iris anyhow, so you have full range of that. The future, we will for sure start working on being able to provide you focus, iris and zoom motors put on there, but you always have to see about payload, you have to balance the system, so there are some limits. The neat thing is, with this camera, with the choice of lenses, you can now get cinematic transmissions, so from a PTZ camera. So you don't have that flat image, the narrow depth of field, that colors. So all that is being able to be done with the FR7, and our zoom motor is intended to help you create the style, the recording, the live transmission you are looking for. It's a good question about Sigma EF mount lenses will be compatible. This is something, theoretically, every zoom lens is able to work with it. You have two limitations. One is the payload. So if the camera cannot balance it nicely, you can always use it with a locked off position, but if you want to do the remote or the tilting, this is something where the payload has to fit to the FR7 head. And additionally, the lens has to be, it can have a lot of torque, right? So it's more important for the motor that the lens doesn't stick. So there are some photo lenses on the especially lower end, which are maybe quite nice price ratio. But if you have those stucking lenses, sometimes the motor will stuck and then go. So if you want to do a fluent zoom, that's something you basically can really not do it. On the other hand, we do have some zoom modes.
We have, especially for this, we have a zoom mode, but it will introduce a higher minimum speed to overcome this sticky part of the movement. Yeah.
So let's address maybe especially those zoom modes you can use. So the zoom modes, one is a standard zoom mode, which has a ramping to start and at the end. So this means when you're zooming in, you don't have to worry that suddenly the image stops. So at the end, the speed will ramp down so that there's a slow end on the zoom. We have a silent mode. Silent mode, let's think about a concert, which is, of course, noise sensitive. You have that right next to the musicians, so you do not want to hear the motor. So if that motor runs on full speed, you might hear a little bit of a noise. The gears have to go into gear, so you hear noise. So on that silent mode, we are limiting the maximum speed. We have a live mode, which is really the fastest mode. So this way you can zoom in real quick, pull focus, for example, get back out. That's an example.
Mode, actually. I mean, you have a
that's
speed.
Another one, yeah.
You have a speed. Anyway, you have a speed control on the panel here and also the web front end. But to make sure that you don't overturn the speed, you can adjust the mode to limit the maximum speed for sure. That's the reason for existing.
Yeah. So those are the zoom modes, and we have one zoom mode for photo lenses, which means there where you have a little bit of risk of getting sticky, and this is where we raise the minimum speed a little bit up so that the motor can run nicely through it. There's a good question about the control and how it is controlled. Yes, all the signals are controlled via Ethernet. The camera has an Ethernet port, and that Ethernet port receives the system, and the standard, the overall communication is based on VSCA protocol.
Yeah, actually, yeah, VSCA.
Yeah, VSCA over Ethernet.
Combination.
Yeah, combination, exactly. And there are a lot of tools. I think even I saw someone from ILME joining us. So all third-party tools who are able to control zoom can be used, like the remote panel, the web GUI, and stuff like that. There is probably a question from your side about power over Ethernet. Theoretically, the FR7 head can be run just by one Ethernet cable, powered and communication. This is PoE++, so a normal PoE+ would not be enough for power. However, our motor will then not have power, so you would need an extra power supply for our motor. If you do that, you probably won't use the PoE anyhow, because then you would run the camera as well through the power from the main. But in the future, we are working on that to somehow provide you a solution either with two Ethernet cables. One is powering our motor, one is powering the camera, so that you have to run just two Ethernet cables. Or the other option would be that we provide or look at a PoE supply which will have enough power to power our motor and the camera. But if you look at the motor itself, it has a very low power consumption.
It's nothing, it's actually maybe 8 watt max or something.
In a max or in a stalled position or
stalled position.
So that is probably something to know about. Looking at the secureness of operation, how is it with that motor if it comes into a situation that the motor does not work? Is the operator who's remotely at a different position, does he see any feedback?
Yeah, the current integration of this is done by Sony, is that the tele light, which is normally off, will stop flashing. And maybe I can emulate this. I disconnect now the communication to the motor. So the motor is actually itself, it's healthy, it's calibrated, nothing happened, but the communication got lost, as you see. And then it flashes, so as soon as I replug the motor.
Actually, let's do that again. I just switched to the...
okay.
Yeah. So you see, as soon as it disengaged, it is flashing.
Yeah. And the same is valid for if something is wrong with the camera itself, so maybe the camera hits an obstruction or something like that. I could actually do that for you. So now the camera is still in operation, but if you have presets or something like that, you cannot drive to the presets. So the presets are now disabled because the camera is out of control, but you could go plus minus with the axis. To overcome this now, we have to repower the camera.
The camera or restart the overall communication from the remotely, right? Restart calibration of the.
There is no option for the head itself, I believe.
Well, that would be a question for Sony. I'm not sure if we have someone expert from Sony.
To improve this, maybe for the operator that he is warned a little bit better, we asked Sony for popping up this kind of some flashing buttons on the remote panel, or maybe a message in the display, which they will maybe consider in next firmwares, which will come up. Currently, the only way to see something is wrong is if the tele lights are flashing or not.
Yeah. Okay, so what it means is that the motor is deeply integrated into the camera. There's a specified protocol we specified together with Sony, and this way there's a thorough communication between the camera and the zoom. So what this means is you have various ideas of how to control it. So you can do it manually, so you use the zoom rocker, you zoom in and out. You can use the joystick, zoom in and out, and for example, you can set tracking and tracing, correct?
Yes. There are two ways. The one way would be to do that on the remote panel, but the more exciting possibility would be on the left front end of the camera again. So maybe I may share you that as well. So in the live section on the left corner of the screen, you will find the preset section, and you have either positioning So if I double click on this position, the camera will instantly go to the position. You can specify a speed. And to mention is that zoom and tilting and panning is synchronized. So you will have a nice, for instance, if you go, if you make a pan and then you could zoom out at the same time, and the motor and of the pan axis and the zoom will stop at the same time.
So the speed is synchronized?
Yes.
So the camera precisely gives you the speed and makes sure that you go.
The camera calculates the needed. The camera knows where to go, and it calculates internally a speed set up for the motor or a time, or it tells the motor which time to go. Motor calculates the speed on its own, and then it's synchronized.
So that was for positioning.
Positioning, but as well, of course, I mean, the motor doesn't care what's the situation is. The camera says always what it has to do, however the context is. The other possibility is a trace option. In this, you could record a complete movement. So you could make first you make a pan, and you make a zoom, and make a focus or something like that. And this is recorded, and then you can replay this by a press of a button.
Okay, so all the functionality we do know from a normal E-mount powered zoom lens is able to be used with that motor, manual control, tracing, tracking, or positioning with working with it. I think about troubleshooting the unit, we already talked about it. You get feedback about the status of the motor, so that's probably one of the important topics to know about. So even if you are even offside, you do know what the status is of the motor, and I think that's very crucial, as if you have multiple studios being remotely controlled from an operator, so that he knows, okay, I have a problem, please someone have a look there, or even just initialize the lens from remotely on the calibration side. Any questions meanwhile? I mean, we are trying our best to give you as good ideas as possible, but if you have any questions, please ask. So I'm not sure, Albrecht, are you already with us, or? I don't see him right now. So maybe we already start talking a little bit about it. So what we have done, or what there was a live event going on in France with Photocine. I believe he said there was a total of 16 camera position, and the FR7 was set next to a DJ, so it was a live DJ event. And that event was used as a use case to see what you can really do. So you were able to remotely operate this camera on stage, and you didn't have to have an operator on stage. He was able to control it far from the control room. And actually he was controlling the motor or the overall setup actually remotely, and 4 setups at the same time. So depending on which camera setup was needed, he would switch the operation. There is a quite nice video online about that show. So we can have a look if we can share it with you either here in the webinar, or we can share it afterwards for you guys. One important topic to talk about is when is it available. So the motor is available theoretically. However, it only works with the upcoming Sony firmware version 2.0. Version 2.0 will introduce a lot of new features, and one of the features is the full support for the zoom motor. With the current firmware, it will not work. You need the firmware version 2.0, and it is scheduled for end of November. Right now, I believe it's November 28th. and we all think this will be the final date, but of course there could be something happening. But on the integration of the Zoom motor, Sony is doing and us are doing tests, and we are right now bug free. This is something worth mentioning it, but maybe there's still something coming up. So we want to make sure, and especially Sony wants to make sure that you are able to receive a bug-free, fully operating firmware version to make sure that your project is successful. Yeah, any questions? I see someone is typing, so that's a good point, or that's a good thing. I think everything we wanted to address in the webinar is addressed. One topic maybe is to think about is the motor right now is sold as a pre-sale with a price of 1,300 euros, which results in a US dollar price of a little bit more than 1,400 US dollars, but there will be a price increase. The price increase, you all know it, power is getting more expensive, we have inflation, manufacturing, everything gets more expensive for us. And this way we will not be able to keep that pricing, so it will slowly go up, and it will come into place 1st of November. So we will release a new price list in 1st of November. So if you are watching this webinar today in October, have a look at it. And look at it. Great, Albrecht, we already talking about you.
Hi.
So welcome.
Thanks. Hello.
Yeah, we already gave you a little introduction of that you have been using the motor in France for that concept, but give us a little bit details about it, what you were doing, what you were using, or how you were using it.
Well, it was the FR7s in a conjunction with the Sony Venice. So the FR7s were used where, well, we normally would have had remote heads or just locked off shots. And we had one of the FR7s at the time was a prototype that was able to get the Chrosziel motor on it, and I believe we used a very wide angle lens on this one to motorize the zoom on it.
So basically, the standard lenses, the power zooms from Sony were not able to get wide enough for your application.
Yeah, in that particular case, we needed something that goes wider than that went wider than 16 millimeters. So that 12-24 millimeter lens came in quite handy. So yeah, that was basically a big advantage having that motor on that lens.
Okay, and what was the outcome, like the image quality? Was it outstanding, or what was the main use case or reason why you would be using the FR7 head with that wide angle lens? Did you want to get the cinematic look, or what?
Why we use the FR7s altogether? I mean, it's because other PTZ cameras are less light sensitive and don't get a similar look to like a Venice or FX9. So that FR7 is a pretty good compromise for getting it as close as possible to those large sensor cinema cameras.
Okay, and then how many FR7s did you use, or how many cameras in total?
On that job, it was about 15 or 16 cameras, and of that, there were about 4 or 5 FR7s. Yeah, so about one of 3 cameras was an FR7.
Okay, and the motorized one was the one next to the DJ?
Yeah. So basically that was a shot where you wouldn't be able to put, well, obviously not an operator, but even a remote head would have been too big, and then we could have had just a locked off shot with like a Rialto or something, but then you don't have the movement. So the FR7 was like the the best compromise between size and flexibility and quality. So yeah, with on a DJ table, on a Panapod, being able to move it up and down, and being able to pan around and adjust to whatever was happening in front of it.
And then, were you using manual focus, or were you operating the focus on an automatic
Well,
system?
no, so the lens has autofocus, but we can obviously activate it and deactivate it. So with that panel, you can sort of push to get the focus, but you can also switch it off if, in case you're like in a locked off situation.
Okay, right. So Sony was creating, I think, a video about it, so that's something we can share afterwards.
Yeah, like a behind the scenes video, yeah.
So is there actually, maybe even for the ones joining us here, is there any questions you would like to ask Albrecht about how it was used or whatever is of interest for you? I mean, setting up was quite easy probably for you. I mean, you had the luck Mark was on site, so I'm not sure even if you touched it, just Mark did it real quick.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the motor that I think it was mostly Mark that set it up, but I mean, it was quite straightforward. Yeah, so there was not too much of an issue.
How did you control it? Did you use the standard Sony ILME-FR7 panel, or were you using the battery?
Yeah. But at the time it was a prototype because I think it needed to have the driver that wasn't like an official release yet.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, let's see if any questions from the people. Will this motor make any Sony FE mount work as it was the PZ?
Yeah, sort of. It just needs to have a zoom ring. So obviously those, as soon as you can put a gear on it, and you can.
So we call it the flexi gear on our side, and with that, you basically use the gear and be able to put it on any lens. And Marcus, we will be able to share the. I mean, we're already writing on it, so you can have a look in the webinar on the recording side. Okay, I think we covered quite a lot altogether. Let's see if there are any additional questions. Can you use only Sony E-mount lenses? You can use third-party lenses. So if they are compatible with the Sony E-mount protocol, and a lot of photo lenses are, you can basically use it. Just have to watch out a little bit for the payload. So smaller E-mount lenses work without problems. If you're using, I mean, there are some really huge Sony E-mount lenses. Those you will have to lock off the camera to use it. And our motor, it's a quite strong motor, so you don't have to worry too much about it. So it should be able to work quite nicely. So any other questions from you guys? So Sigma could be a potential alternative, yes. And will touch AF work the same way as a PZ lens? Yes, it would work, in my opinion. But that's something, if this works with the standard FX6 and the FR7 head, it will work with the zoom motor. So that's probably something you have to ask the Sony team. They are, of course, have more knowledge about it than us. Okay. So first of all, Albrecht, thank you very much for taking the time this morning and today, this evening. We do know it's getting late in France, So really appreciate it, you taking the time.
Yes. Thank you.
We are very much looking forward to see more use cases out there and talk with all you guys about how you're using it. So I would suggest next webinar is in December, and everybody who is using it comes together and reports about what were the use cases, who did use it in a church, who used it at a concert, who used it at a parliament, or whatever nice shots. We do know, for example, from an installation for a big soccer stadium where they have the lock-off positions and then can remotely use it. So there will be some quite exciting setups going on, and we are looking forward to see the installations and the content of it, especially. So there's another question about, is there any recommended setup for NDI control and video delivery, converter or product? Albrecht, if you're still with us, I believe you were using the Erica system.
Yes, we were using the cam racers because the ISO toppers, there will be, or there is a product from Erica like made for those Sony PTZ cameras that will just fit right underneath it and has the same measurements as the camera base, but this wasn't available at the time, and I think it's just becoming available. So for now we're just using a cam racer that's like at the foot of the camera, and then just putting up power network and video cables from it.
But theoretically, you basically could use the Erica system or the multi-dime systems, take the Ethernet protocol, like take the version where the Ethernet communication is on there, and then add the HDMI to that signal and have it remotely, correct?
Yeah, there's a couple of fiber converters out there now, and I mean you can either, I mean there's a few that are really made for those PTZ cameras, or I mean any sort of fiber converter that even is not necessarily attached to it, but a couple meters away will be okay to transport it to the truck or to the fly pack.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, I think that's it for today. Again, thank you very much, Albrecht, for joining. Everybody else, thank you for joining as well, taking the time. We really appreciate it. Go out in the world, say everybody, this is the perfect solution, and have them contact us. We will be very happy to help you on every question you have. Just send us an email to info@chrosziel.com, and we will forward it internally to the right specialist. Visit our website, chrosziel.com. You get valuable information there. Sign up for the newsletter. Everything which is happening on your product side will be released in a newsletter, so this way you stay updated or have a look at the news section on our website. So thank you very much, and I will stop the recording, and if you want to join us a little bit longer, feel free and we can chat a little bit together.